Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Moscow, because the most important statement is coming exactly from this area. Today the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation stated that the United Kingdom and France are working on arming Ukraine with nuclear weapons and delivery means involving the transfer of European components, equipment and technologies in the nuclear sphere, potentially including the French TN-75 warhead. And this is the beginning of the 5th year of the special military operation. Yes, today is the 4th anniversary and the beginning of the 5th year, and today of course lots of European leaders and politicals are supporting Ukraine, and according to information we had yesterday, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa were planning to arrive in Kiev, and they arrived today, and pro-Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see the moments when they arrived on the territory of the city of Kiev. And obviously they're planning not just to support Ukraine and not just to support Zelensky, obviously, and first of all they will serve as something like an air defense system. You know that the Russians never attack the territory of Ukraine and the territory of Kiev when the representatives of the Western countries are located there. So most likely they're planning not just to support Kiev and Zelensky. First of all, they're going to be something like Ursula von der Patriot system. We see that the conflict has been changed significantly since the beginning of the special military operation, and we see that the conflict is developing, and many new things we will see during the upcoming year. And of course, when talking about nuclear weapon, this is going to be a very big changes in the conflict. As of the current situation, as of the 24th of February, during the previous 24 hours, we received a lot of very important updates. Let's discuss them. But before we start, first I would like to remind you that 2 days ago, during the Russian massive missile attack through the entire territory of Ukraine, we received a lot of updates from the territory of the city of Lvov. If you remember, 2 days ago there were reports that several explosions took place on the territory of the city, and dozens of Ukraine police officers were wounded as a result of explosions. So that was the first attack in the series of attacks that took place, that have taken place since the beginning of the 22nd of February. 2 days after, so between the 23rd and the 24th of February, during the night, there were two more attacks that took place in the southern regions of Ukraine. The first attack took place on the territory of the city of Nikolaev. Pro-Russian sources and pro-Ukrainian sources stated that there were new ambush, explosion at gas station in Nikolaev, and according to information we have, 2 police officers were injured. The next attack took place several hours after, this time on the territory of the city of Dnipro, which is located along the river of Dnipro. At this time, we received a report that there were explosions at a police station in Dnipro, explosions and gun shootings, and this is the consequences of a small battle on the territory of this police department. So as you can see, the buildings were damaged, and according to information we have, several police officers were also wounded. Summarizing everything, since the beginning of the 22nd of February, there were 3 attacks carried out by somebody on police officers and police departments of Ukraine, and up to 30 police officers, as you can see, were wounded. But there were a similar attack, but this time on the territory of the Russian Federation. This night, pro-Russian sources reported that there was an explosion right in front of a car of police officers, and according to information we have, several police officers of the Russian Federation on the territory of the city of Moscow were also wounded. As of now, it's very difficult to say whether the Ukrainians and the Russians were talking about military forces, special forces are behind these attacks, but and we most likely will receive answers to these questions in coming days. But obviously the situation is weird, because we understand that the main purpose of this attacks is of course chaos, and the most important thing is to create the situation when the next time civilians or somebody calls to police department for help, we understand that most likely the next time the police officers of that region would not react very fast. They will be very careful, and of course this can lead to very, very bad consequences. So this is the situation. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous nights, the Russians carried out another attack on objects of energy infrastructure in Ukraine. This time the Russians used around 100 drones. The sources reported several 100 drones or something like this, and the Russians used several hypersonic missiles. According to information we have, the Russians attacked an airfield in the area of the settlement by the name of Buylak. According to information we have, the Russians attacked this airfield with 2 or 3 hypersonic missiles of Zircon type. So these missiles were launched from the area of the Black Sea. Another important thing is that the Russians attacked several objects of energy infrastructure on the territory of the city of Zaporizhia. So, for example, in this video we can see the consequence of attack, we can see explosions, and we can see how special services of Ukraine were trying to stabilize the situation. The sources reported that the Russians attacked objects of energy infrastructure in this area in its southern and northwestern parts. The sources are saying that the Russians attacked these object of energy infrastructure. Furthermore, pro-Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see how a Russian drone was jammed by electronic warfare equipment of Ukraine, and how the drone, due to these problems, will fall down on the river of Dnipro. So this is the situation with strikes. Now let's talk about the situation on the ground. And first let's talk about the Zaporizhia direction, where the Russians and the Ukrainians continue their offensive operation. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very important updates. The first and the most important is that the Russians, as a result of offensive, managed to improve their positions to the west of the settlement of Zalizhnitne. This information was provided by pro-Russian sources as of the beginning of the 24th of February. We still haven't received anything that can confirm this. The only thing we have is FPV drone attacks that took place in the western part of the settlement of Zalizhnitne. This video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians here. So probably those attacks were the moments when the Russians were trying to begin offensive in this area with the purpose to establish complete control over this stronghold. Another important video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources is this one. Here we can see dozens of episodes of how Ukrainians were attacking and destroying Russian reconnaissance drones that were flying above the settlements of Vozdvizhivka, Slavyansk, and Verkhnya Tersa. So lots of episodes, lots of drones were destroyed by the armed forces of Ukraine. All these episodes, all these things were taking place here. And obviously the thing that's worth attention is the level of Russian interest in this direction. If you remember, we discussed during the previous days that the Russians began their major offensive operation in this area with the purpose to establish complete control over these settlements. And today, right before I started making this video, we received a report, according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, that Russians, as a result of clashes, managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Rizdvyanka. We will adjust the map before the next video. We will adjust the map. We will think what is going to happen next. But obviously, if this information is true, then we can say about complete collapse of the entire Zaporizhia defense. Especially, we can talk about complete collapse of the Orekhov defense. Because with the fall of the settlement of Rizdvanka, we believe that Ukrainians will not be able to hold their positions for a very long period of time in the area of the villages of Vozdvizhivka and Verkhnya Tersa. These settlements the Ukrainians would be forced to abandon their positions in these villages if they lost control over the settlement of Rizdvanka. But at the same time, we understand that the reports that the Russians are publishing and the Ukrainians are publishing are completely probably compete each other, because the Ukrainians are saying that they continue counter-offensive operation from the northern direction, but as for the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything about this counter-offensive, no map changes, and the Russians today reported that they managed to capture these settlements, so which means that somebody is lying. As of the beginning of the 24th of February, we don't know for sure who is lying, but obviously if the situation continues developing the same way, in 2, 3 or 4 days we will understand who is lying and who is telling the truth. Also, pro-Russian sources published this video from the settlement of Novonikolaevka. Here we can see a huge concentration of Ukrainian forces, most likely drone operators, that were discovered by Russians, and as soon as the Russians discovered these positions, they attacked this territory with drones. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kostyantynivka direction, where the situation continued deteriorating. According to information we have, the Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to improve their position significantly. This is the end of the 23rd of February and this is the beginning of the 24th of February. As you can see, the Russians currently are tasked to establish complete control over the southwestern part of the settlement of Kostyantynivka, and according to this geolocation that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, we can see that the Russians managed to answer the southwestern part of the city and most likely to dig in deeper. Furthermore, the Russians improved their positions to the south of the city. Now the Russians are fighting for this industrial zone, and we have another video where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russian stormtroopers that were trying to advance in this area. But these are not the most important nowadays. Probably the most interesting piece of news is coming from the most northern part of the city of Kostyantynivka. Today, pro-Russian sources published this video. And in this video, we can see how Russians were bombing positions of the armed forces of Ukraine on the territory of the city with aviation. And in this video, we can see 2 explosions. One of them took place in the central part of the southern Kostyantynivka, and the second attack took place in the area of this dam. So the first strike took place in this area. The Russians most likely were trying to attack some temporary deployment point, and during this attack the Russians destroyed the dam completely. At least the sources are saying that the dam was damaged significantly, and now according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the water from this reservoir is coming out, and the sources are saying that this territory is already is no longer available and is no longer fits the possibilities to redeploy forces from the mainland in the southern parts of the city of Kostyantynivka, because there is water from this water reservoir. So the water, according to information we have, is going in the northeastern direction, and currently there is something like a barrier that Ukrainians most likely will not be able to cross during the next several days. They would be forced to wait when the level of water will be reduced. As of now, they need to wait, or they need to find another way how to redeploy additional forces and reinforcements in the southern part of the city of Kostyantynivka, where the Russians, it seems, are about to break through the Ukraine's defense completely and to establish complete control over the territory. So this is the situation in the city of Kostyantynivka, and it seems that we are entering the decisive phase of the battle for this city. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Slavyansk direction, where the Russians are keeping advancing. Almost every single day we adjust the map in the Russian favor by coloring additional territories either as gray zones or the territories under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Here we can see the way how the map been changed since the beginning of the previous week or so, and during the previous 12 hours the map was adjusted once again based on the reports that were published by neutral mappers. So for example, neutral mappers confirmed that Russians captured the settlement of Lipovka. These are the changes on the ground between 2 dates. This is the end of the 22nd and this is the beginning of the 24th. Furthermore, the Russians are keeping advancing along Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal, trying to take under control these strongholds, and the Russians are advancing in the direction of the villages of Krivaya Luka, Kaleniki and Rizvinka. We see that the Russians are entering also the final phase of the battle for this territory, and most likely these villages will be captured by Russians in coming days, and the Ukrainians will be forced to fall back further in the western direction towards the settlement of Nikolaevka. Now let's talk about the Lyman direction. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded in this area as well. This is the end of the 22nd, this is the end of the 23rd. We received the video that confirmed Russian control over the eastern part of the city, and by the morning of the 24th of February, we received the report that the Russians managed to, or are about to cut the pockets completely, which is located to the north and to the northeast of the city of Lyman. Most likely in coming days, this pocket would be cut by Russians, and then the Russians will begin their major offensive operation in the western direction with the purpose to outflank the city of Lyman from the north and from the northwest. The Russians, as we can see, are not planning to answer the city of Lyman itself or to get deeper. As of now, they are still focused to encircle the settlement completely without being involved in combats and clashes on the territory of the city itself. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special, just several neutral mappers confirmed that something is happening on the eastern bank of the river Oskol and that the Ukrainians are continue losing their positions. As for the northern directions, during the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded in the area of the city of Sumi. The Russians, I would like to remind you, began fighting for the second defense layer of the city of Sumi. We're talking about these villages by the name of Mala Karchakovka, Pisarevka, Ivolzhanska, Kiyanitsa, Krapivnshina, Marina, Nova Sich, and Karchakovka. The Russians during the previous days improved their position significantly, and basically the Russians managed to approach these villages, and most likely now the Russians are about or have already launched or about to launch their attacks from the northwest and the northeastern flanks with the purpose to answer this second defense layer, with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this territory. So something like this is going to happen here. At the same time, we received lots of videos with reconnaissance drones of the armored forces of the Russian Federation that were destroyed by Ukrainian anti-drone forces. In this video, we can see once again lots of drones of the armored forces of the Russian Federation that were flying above the fields to the west of this defense layer, and how Ukrainians were attacking them and destroying them. So here we can see the similar situation that we have already discussed in the area of the settlements of Vozdvizhinka, Verkhnya Tersk, and Rizdvanka. And I would like to remind you that the Russians, according to the Ministry of Defense, managed to capture the village, and now we can see the same story. The Russians intensified their intelligence reconnaissance operations, but the most important thing that these reconnaissance operations are being intensified to the west of the main defense of the main direction of Russian attack. So which means that maybe the Russians have plans to change the vector of their offensive operation and to begin offensive in the southwestern direction with the purpose to begin outflanking the settlement of Sumi from the north and from the northwest. So very interesting situation. Let's wait and see what is going to be next. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.